Bueno, bienvenidos y bienvenidas a este encuentro maravilloso. Tenemos la oportunidad de poder conversar nada más y nada menos que con Beto Hernández, que está de gira por el estado. Estuvo en el Salón del Cómic de Barcelona, ha estado en Málaga, va a pasar por Madrid, todo esto en una semana. Aquí está en Bilbao y luego va a volver a Barcelona, o sea que está de aquí para allá. Vamos a hacer preguntas cortas, va a estar Usue traduciendo, vamos a intentar aprovechar el tiempo que tenemos al máximo y luego, por supuesto, firmará a quien tenga su ticket. Sobre todo la novedad que ha salido con la cúpula, que también han colaborado en esta gira de Beto, que es Palomar, esa edición nueva de Palomar. Y voy a empezar directamente con una pregunta que me apetece mucho hacerle, aunque ya a veces he hablado de ello, y es que su madre era lectora de cómics, la importancia de que su madre les contagiara a los hermanos la pasión por los tebeos.
Well, the first question is, your mother was a comic reader, and how important was it for you to hook on to comic reading?
Should I use this? Or?
I think we can share it. ¿Lo compartimos el micro?
This one?
Bueno.
Okay.
I think
Okay. Hello.
Michael, thanks for coming.
Yeah. I'm so happy to be here because the response I've been here for a few days, and it's great. We started reading comics because our mother liked comic books in America when she was growing up in the 1940s. She just liked them, and she just liked the art of it, how the storytelling was, and she would draw, from the comic books.
Así. Dice, bueno, primero que está muy contento de estar aquí con la respuesta que ha recibido de la gente, que empezó a leer cómics porque su madre era lectora de cómics, leía cómics en los años 40 y le gustaba el arte de contar historias, cómo se contaban las historias en los cómics.
And so she outgrew it, she got older, she got married, and she had my older brother Mario, who's 4 years older than me. But so when he was getting older, she thought, I like comic books, so she gave him comic books, and he liked them. So he started drawing from them, and I came 4 years later, and I liked what he was doing. He liked to draw from comic books too. He had comic books, and he drew from them. And I just loved the way they looked, the way the stories were told.
Primero, su madre creció, tuvo hijos y primero llegó su hermano Mario, que es 4 años mayor que él, y la madre le daba los cómics y él empezó a dibujar y a él, a Beto, le gustaba cómo se veían esos dibujos que hacía su hermano.
And then 2 years later, Jaime came, and he saw me and Mario liking comic books and drawing, so he copied. He wanted to make comics. And then pretty soon there was 5 boys in the house, 5 boys in the house. And we made so much mess. We ran around going crazy, playing with balls and everything. And our dad was, ay, give him those comic books so he'll be quiet. And so we would look at comic books, and then he would tear open a grocery bag, just a bag, get it at the grocery store, tear it up. And then he goes, draw. And he gave us crayons, and then we would just lay there and draw because we would be quiet.
Pues dice que 2 años después de él llegó su hermano Jaime y al final eran 5 hermanos que hacían un montón de ruido por la casa, follón, balones y demás, y el padre le decía a la madre, dale esos cómics que con eso están tranquilos, y rompían una bolsa del supermercado de esas gringas que son de papel y ahí les ponían a dibujar con los colores y con eso estaban tranquilos.
Y un día decidieron hacer tebeos.
And one day you decided to start making your own comic books, all of you.
Yes, because, we were getting older, but we still continued making comics, and we got pretty good, for kids, But we were bored with the comics we were reading, like, say, Marvel and then DC comics, American comics. And we would see in comic book collections or history of comic books, comics from Europe. Like Spain, and in Italy and different countries. And we thought that was more interesting because there was just more concern with making different kinds of stories. So we started to look at that, and we thought, well, we can bring that to our comics, what we liked, the art. And we just made our own fanzine.
Pues dice que sí, que se empezaron a hacer mayores y que estaban un poco aburridos con los cómics que estaban leyendo de Marvel y DC, bueno, DC, y que entonces empezaron a través de la historia, mirando la historia de los cómics, encontraron cómics españoles, italianos, europeos, y vieron que eran diferentes, que tenían historias diferentes, contadas de otra manera, y que decidieron incorporarlo a lo que ellos estaban haciendo.
And then we got lucky and we made a fanzine, the first Love and Rockets, but it was still a fanzine. It was still amateur. So we didn't know how to sell it. We was like, I don't know, what do we do now? So we, at the same time at Fantagraphics, they weren't publishing comics yet, but they had a magazine called the Comics Journal, and it was very scabrous, very angry toward comics because they didn't like the way Marvel and DC were treating their creators, because the creators were making new comics and they were not getting anything from it. And Marvel and DC were selling the rights to movies, but the artists got no credit. So they were very angry about that. So I thought, well, if they're very angry, then we'll send our comic to them, because then maybe, you know, just for free advertising, because we didn't care if they liked it or not. We just wanted free advertising. But Gary Groth, the publisher, saw the book and goes, oh, I like this. You want us to publish your comic? And that's how it started.
Bueno, pues entonces tuvieron suerte y hicieron el primer Love and Rockets y no sabían cómo venderlo, no sabían cómo acceder a esto. Entonces, en ese momento Fantagraphics, por lo visto, estaban bastante enfadados con la manera en la que Marvel y DC trataban a sus dibujantes, y entonces ellos aprovecharon un poco esa tesitura y dijeron, bueno, pues si están enfadados con el trato que están recibiendo, pues les vamos a mandar nosotros el nuestro. Y lo vio Gary Graff, ¿puede ser? ¿Has dicho? Gary Graff es
Gary Groth, the publisher.
El que publicaba, y lo vio y le gustó y dijo, bueno, pues podemos publicarlo.
En ese aprendizaje, en esa lectura y demás, creo que fue importante la revista Zap Comics, que su hermano Mario llegó un día con la revista Zap Comics de Robert Crumb y compañía, y para ellos fue como que les explotó la cabeza.
Vale.
Después de leer los textos de Archie o de Jack Kirby, de Steve Ditko, de repente llegó Robert Crumb.
Well, after reading Archie, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, one day your brother Mario showed up with an issue of Zap Comics, and everything changed, no? Robert Crumb and company, for you, was that the leap into adult comic book reading, or was it mind-blowing for you?
Yes, it was, because it was dirty. I was a boy, just a little boy, and so, I liked Marvel and DC. I liked all that stuff at the time. It was the 1960s, early 1960s. And then all of a sudden there was underground comics, and I didn't understand it. But I saw an issue of Zap Comics that Robert Crumb did, and I thought, oh my God, because what attracted everybody to Robert Crumb is he drew like the old cartoon styles, like from the old cartoons, the Fleischer Brother cartoons, Betty Boop style art. But his comics are crazy and dirty. So, you're a little boy going, ooh, But at the same time, you read them and they were funny and they were political and they intelligent, which Marvel and DC comics weren't in the same way. So even though I still liked Spider-Man and Batman and all that stuff, there was the underground comics that we kept thinking about. Like, that's interesting.
Pues dice que sí, que le gustó en principio porque era sucio, que le gustaba Marvel y DC, pero que de repente aparecieron estos comics underground, un ejemplar de esto de Zap Comics, y lo que le atraía de Crumb era que era un estilo como antiguo, dibujos tipo Betty Boo, pero eran sucios y sin embargo también eran divertidos, inteligentes, eran políticos, y entonces aunque le seguía gustando Marvel y DC, pues se sentía muy atraído por este nuevo mundo.
Fue un salto repentino porque eran críos a la edad adulta como lector.
Was it a sudden jump because you were children and suddenly you had to you jumped into the adult world?
No, it was just simply comics over there. These comics here, and then these are my comics, and this and that. But we always read different kinds of comics. We weren't the superhero fan that just only read superheroes. We liked Mad Magazine, and there was a lot of at the same time there was. This is it's hard to explain this one, but there was hot rod magazines about guys driving cars and motorcycles and stuff, and they were and that was before the undergrounds, and these were what the underground artists did before underground comics. So we liked those just because the art was great and they're funny and we liked them. And then there was underground comics, so we always knew. So we never had a prejudice block to like black and white different kinds of comics. Because, like I said, Mario, he liked any kind of comic that he was interested in the artwork. And so that, you know, that happened, that came to me and Jaime as well. So when we did Love and Rockets, we're thinking about those comics. They were black and white, they were different, they weren't superhero. We have superheroes in our comics, but it was more about let's bring in the world that don't read comics.
Dice que no es que saltara de unos a otros, sino que de repente tenían a los superhéroes aquí y los otros allí, como simultáneamente. Bueno, que empezaron a leer, había cómics también de Hot Rod, que conducían coches y no sé qué, que fueron, sí, predecesores por lo visto de los cómics underground, y que ellos intentaron incorporar todas esas cosas a lo que a su hermano Mario le gustaba todo eso, y que por lo tanto Jaime y a él también, y que entonces pensábamos en este otro tipo de cómics al empezar nosotros a dibujar los nuestros.
Nació Love and Rockets, donde también hay mucha importancia en cuanto a las referencias a la música, es también muy importante.
And that's how Love and Rockets was born, no? There's a lot of references to music.
Mm-hmm. Love and Rock, but yeah, so when we started making our comics for Love and Rockets, we were going to the Los Angeles punk rock scene. We were going to see the bands and all this, and it's very colorful and stylish, the clothes and the fun about it and the music. But then once you left the show, you go outside of the club, and that's when the story begins. Hey, people drunk and running around, and the cops chasing, just all the crazy fun. And the style was good in those days. Like what Jaime's Maggie and Hopi characters, Locas, just had cool style because that's how the girls dressed, and it was so much fun. So that's what he did, you know, in the comics, and that was new. Because if you look at a comic from Marvel and DC at the time, back then, it was very like, oh, you have a mohawk, well, you have a switchblade, and you're the bad guy, you know. And we knew the punk rockers as cool kids, just fun-loving music fans, you know. So that's what he did. So I had the rest of the comic, I was free to do what I wanted to do. And that's what I challenged myself to do the Palomar stories.
Dice, bueno, que en esa época ellos empezaron a introducirse como en la escena punk rock, y entonces que era, pues iban a los conciertos y todo el mundo iba vestido muy estiloso y era muy divertido, pero que cuando salían del club era cuando empezaban las historias realmente locas, en la policía y las peleas o historias muy locas y muy divertidas. Y entonces que eso es los personajes de su hermano Jaime están basados en estas historias y este tipo de personajes. Dice que si te fijas en los cómics de la época de Marvel y DC, que estaba todo muy encasillado. Si aparecía alguien con una cresta, inevitablemente era malo y tenía una navaja y tal. Entonces, bueno, como su hermano Jaime pues hacía estos personajes, él tenía toda la libertad para crear otro tipo de historias, y que todo eso condujo a Palomar.
Let's talk about Palomar. Cómo surgió y la importancia de Luba, que es el corazón de Palomar.
Let's talk about Palomar. Where does the story come from? Would it exist without Luba? And is she the heart and soul of Palomar?
When I first created Luba, she was in a science fiction story. Like she was just the crazy science. Because you know, I was looking at comics from Europe, and it wasn't too weird to have a character like Luba in the story. You know, just mad and yeah. Da, da, da. But I liked that character, so I wanted to put her in a story that wasn't science fiction. That was just about people. And I really loved Italian neo-realist films, especially from the late 40s and the 50s, and even from Luis Buñuel, who directed Los Olvidados and stuff. I just loved that stuff. I just loved it. And I thought, well, I want to do comics like that. Comics taken from that, but still comics. And so I decided to make Luba the character, because Luba writes herself. She's so much fun to write in those days that I just went crazy, and I just had to. Sometimes she would go crazy, and I would just have to pull her back. Hey, it's a comic book. But it was fun to do that. So, and the readers responded. They thought, I've never seen comics like this. Oh, this is great. So I was happy to keep going.
Dice que cuando creó Luba, él estaba leyendo, bueno, cuando creó Palomar, él estaba leyendo historias de ciencia ficción. cómics europeos y que no era raro personajes como Luba en ese tipo de historias de ciencia ficción y tal, pero sí era un poco sacarla de la ciencia ficción era lo que él le pareció interesante. Estaba interesado en el neorrealismo italiano, en Buñuel, y le gustaban ese tipo de historias. Entonces Luba dice que es un personaje que se crea a sí misma, que muchas veces se vuelve loca y él tiene que como contenerla y retenerla, y dice que el público respondió muy bien al personaje.
Siguiendo con el personaje de Luba, esa idea que hay de matriarcado en la obra, que si le salió de una manera natural o él le da importancia a ese poder que tienen las mujeres en Palomar.
Is the idea of matriarchy important in Palomar, the position of women?
It turned out that way because as I grew up, Jaime and I grew up, we'd always go to family gatherings, and it was our mother had her sisters. They lived in town, so we always had a big family thing. And there's kids, and there's the women, and then there's the tios, the uncles. And the women were running things. They were cooking and yelling and running around, taking care of everything. And the kids are running around, and the uncles are, with their cerveza on. So that's how we saw the world. Because a kid makes up what the world's about, what they see. So making that and putting that in Palomar is what I wanted because I knew it'd be original. I wanted to tell my story because I didn't want to copy Spider-Man or Batman or whatever. They were fine doing their own thing, but I wanted to have this is fun for me. This is interesting. That would make interesting comics. So that was my job, to make fun comics out of what I experienced.
Dice que en realidad se volvió así, no fue intencionado, que que ellos tienen una familia muy grande, con muchos tíos, primos, hermanos, y en las reuniones familiares pues las mujeres eran las que dirigían, cocinaban, organizaban, y los tíos pues estaban sentados, así como ha dicho él, con su birra y mirando. Entonces dice que al final haces lo que ves, con lo que has crecido y lo que has visto, pues y él pensó que iba a ser original en los cómics y que él no quería copiar historias de Marvel y DC, que él creía que esto iba a ser divertido y que lo haría más interesante.
¿Cómo se planteó la evolución del personaje? Y si es consciente de que los lectores han crecido con los personajes de la serie.
How did you think about the evolution of this character? And do you realize that the readers have grown up with this character, have grown up at the same time as the character has?
I thought that was important because that's what's happening to us. You're young when you start reading comics, and you start to get older, but Spider-Man stays the same age. Batman stays the same age. And I understand it. I'm not criticizing. I understand it. They have to sell toys and movies and all this stuff, so they make a new Batman movie. It's a new guy, Spider-Man. That's how it works for them. But I thought, well, why don't I just make it like my life, And you start out young, and you start to get older. And because since we were an independent comic, there was nobody to tell us we couldn't do that, that you couldn't, So I don't know, just took a chance and wanted to do that,
Pues dice que es lo lógico, que crecemos y que envejecemos y bueno, Superman y Batman no envejecen, no crecen y que es así, que él lo entiende, que era ese tipo de cómic, pero que él pensó lo voy a hacer como es mi vida, como es mi realidad. Y que desde que formaban parte de los cómics independientes, nadie les decía nunca que no podían hacer algo, entonces pues así lo hicieron, así lo hizo.
También es importante en la obra el cruce de historias y de personajes, a ver si eso le ha marcado a la hora de pensar los guiones.
It's also important how the stories and the characters cross the stories. Has this led you to direct the story one way or the other?
The way I write stories, I don't write... This is embarrassing. I don't... I'm sorry. I don't write storylines or plots or anything like that. I create characters and they write the stories. Luba writes her story. People, Carmen Heraclio, and Cello, the sheriff, they all wrote their own stories. I created them just to be there for the stories, just to tell a different parts of the story. But what happens is the characters take over. I have to pay attention to what they want to do. And like I said, like Luba, it's like you gotta say no, 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 you know. So that it just keep that. So that's just it's natural. It just comes out of my brain that way. I have to focus on keeping it, you know, coherent, keeping it like, you know, so the reader will know what's going on.
Vale. Bueno, dice que es la manera en la que él escribe, que no escribe guiones ni un story, ni una cosa como organizada, él crea personajes. Y estos personajes son los que escriben su propia historia. Él los crea para que cuenten diferentes partes de la historia, y los personajes al final toman el protagonismo y él les sigue y de alguna manera los contiene, como contaba con Luba, que le tiene que agarrar un poco. Dice que es una manera muy natural, que le sale natural y que lo tiene que, bueno, que lo enfoca de esta manera. Él crea los personajes y ellos se van creando las historias.
¿Cómo ve que la relacionen con el realismo mágico y se cite a García Márquez o a Isabel Allende?
How do you feel about being compared to the magical realism of Gabriel García Márquez or Isabel Allende?
It's fine. It's no, it's never been a copy or, you know, that. It's always simply been that we're on the same energy level, brain energy level. That's something, because when you grow up, a little kid, and I'm Catholic, right? So it just there's the history of Catholicism. There's real life, and then there's the mystery of ghosts and just interesting things, because we grew up hearing stories about ghosts and just weird phenomenon happening in an otherwise normal world. That just fascinated us. We just thought it was a wonderful way to tell stories.
Dice que bien, que le parece bien que le comparen con el realismo mágico de estos autores, pero dice que él no es que intentara copiar nada, que es que están en un mismo nivel de energía, que cuando creces, pues que hay historias del catolicismo, la vida misma, historias de fantasmas que oyes cuando eres pequeño, historias que te van contando y que al final pues que crean esta misma sensación.
¿Ha recibido alguna oferta de trasladar la obra al medio audiovisual?
Have you been offered to bring your stories to the big screen or to any type of screen?
Well, over the years, there's been people wanting to do it. It's hard to say because it never happened, because Hollywood's kind of tricky. They try to trick you into giving you your work by saying, "Oh, we love your work and stuff. What do you think a movie is?" And I would just point to the book, this, and they'll go, because I didn't give them any information. So it's very tricky, and basically Jaime and I have turned them down because they don't know what to make. They don't know what to make. They don't know what is Palomar. Can we have spaceships and dinosaurs and, you know, superheroes? No, that's not what it's about. Because people think comic books are just that, you know, superheroes and spaceships and stuff. Fine, that's good. Go do that. But they want us to make them look good. Hollywood is a very sneaky business. So right now, it's just hard to say yes to a lot of their, you know, and nobody wants to pay you. They don't want to pay you. They want to get paid. Everybody gets paid except the creator. And I'm saying, nope, sorry. They go, what do you want? And then they go, oh, you're just doing this for money. Oh, you're just doing this for money. Oh, are you doing it for free? Are they doing it for free? Everybody does it, you know, everybody gets paid except the creator. It's like, nope. And so they don't like us. But things are changing because of the streaming and the way you can see movies and see TV series now. There's more interest in different kinds of comics, and something like Palomar, there's more interest in it. So you'll know if something happens, because, you know, it's like I said, it's very difficult, and I'm very suspicious. So, but lately I've been talking to people who like the strip, that like the way it is. Cross your fingers that it stays the way it is, or stays, the heart of it is the same. So, you know, we'll see.
Bueno, dice que sí, durante los años pues les han ido ofreciendo cosas, pero que no ha sucedido porque Hollywood es muy engañoso, que te dicen que les encanta tu trabajo, me encanta tu trabajo, pero cuando te preguntan, a ver, ¿cómo lo quieres hacer? Y él dice, pues quiero mi libro, ¿no? Tal cual es. Y entonces ellos no saben qué hacer, creen que el mundo del cómic solamente son superhéroes y ficción y ciencia ficción, entonces pues que no han llegado a ninguna esto porque ellos no quieren, ellos solo quieren que ellos les hagan quedar bien a los de Hollywood y que esto no es así. Entonces que luego te acusan de que solo hagas las cosas por dinero, ¿qué es lo que quieres? Y dices, pues que no, pues ganar. Y te dicen, pues solo lo haces por dinero, no, pero bueno, todos trabajamos por dinero. De todas formas dices que las cosas cree que están cambiando, que con el streaming y demás, que la gente empieza a interesarse por otro tipo de historias como la de Palomar, y que entonces que vete a saber qué ocurra, que ahora mismo está hablando con gente sobre el guión y que hay que cruzar los dedos para, igual, con suerte, en no mucho tiempo poder verlo.
Pregunta inevitable, personalmente creo que son simples rumores, pero a veces se habla de cosas de fans, entre fans, se habla de la posible rivalidad entre hermanos, si existe algo así.
Do you think there's actual rivalry between brothers, or is this just a made-up fan thing?
Well, yeah, I think people expect that, but no, just because like, oh, well, Jaime's famous, and no, you're not famous. But no, because Jaime and I separate completely. We don't. He sees my comics and he goes, oh, he knows what he's doing. I see his comics and he knows what he's doing. It's different. So we just split Love and Rockets, the magazine, in half, and we just keep away from each other. And that's how we've lasted for 40 years.
Dice que no, que es lo que la gente espera a lo mejor, pero que no, que ellos están completamente separados. Jaime ve su trabajo y dice, mira, y yo veo lo suyo y tal, pero no tienen ningún problema el uno con el otro, cada uno hace su trabajo, pero sin historias, vaya.
¿Cómo afronta los trabajos de encargo? Por ejemplo, alguna vez que ha hecho alguna cosa para DC Comics, para otras editoriales.
How do you approach commissioned works, for example, for DC Comics or other things that you might have done?
This is unpleasant, but I had to do it for work. Love and Rockets in America, it doesn't sell all that great. So I have to work on other comics. And they would ask me, like, oh, write for us, do this comic. And you think, oh, they want Gilberto Hernandez. Yeah, they want me. No, you work for those big companies, and you're just another cog in the wheel. You're just another artist. They got you. They want your name, and they want you. So they'll pay you for your work, but you're not a big deal. You're not. Batman is bigger than you. Well, I don't care. It's fine. No, let them do what they want to do. And they go, oh, you big ego and all that stuff. I go, no. How many people have written and drawn Batman stories since 1939? And how many people have done Palomar stories since 1983? They just, so, no, it's fine. It's fine. I don't mind. I really don't have a prejudice against them. I just needed the work. And if I don't need the work, I won't work with them.
Bueno, que básicamente lo hizo por dinero. Que Love and Rockets pues no vende tanto como él le hubiera gustado y que ha tenido que trabajar, pero que él dice que Batman lo ha hecho muchísima gente y cuánta gente ha hecho Palomar. Entonces, bueno, que él no se mete con ello, pero que cuando lo ha hecho ha sido pues trabajo puro y duro y ya está.
Acaba de comentar que Love and Rockets no es un gran título, no es un hit, pero ¿cómo ve ahora la situación del cómic a nivel en Estados Unidos?
Sí, how do you see the situation of comics in the United States? Because you just said that Love and Rockets does not sell as much as you would like, no?
Mm-hmm. Yes, luckily there's the independent comic scene that we helped, not created, but helped create, because there's the Superman, DC and Marvel, and then there's the independent comics that came from the undergrounds. And so we had our comics, but then Dan Klaus came, Peter Bagg came, Charles Burns came, Jim Woodring came, all these, Mary Fleener, all these people started to come, and they were already ready to do comics. It's not like they just learned to make comics. They already made comics, so it was one after the other, and so pretty soon there was a pretty good scene. Now the reason it hasn't gotten bigger, and some of those have been made into movies and this and that, but the reason it's still in an independent scene is because Marvel and DC superheroes have the best promotion that anybody could have. It's Hollywood movies. They keep making billion-dollar Hollywood movies supporting the big companies. Now, the trouble with that, the movies are starting to poop out. People are sick of them. People don't like the Marvels. They don't like Doctor Strange 2. They don't like Aquaman because they're tired of the same movie over and over. And it's starting to happen. No, they'll be around, but they're not as big as they were when it was, Spider-Man, Iron Man, the Avengers. That was huge, and now it's starting to get. I hope that it starts to have a balance, and people look more toward independent comics, because it's just that people have a prejudice. They go, well, I don't want to read this stuff. It's boring. It's like, well, you haven't read it, So I hope that I think things can get better. I do.
Bueno, dice que por suerte hay una escena independiente, que en su día ellos ayudaron a la escena independiente que vino del underground, pero ayudaron porque había ya muchos dibujantes que estaban preparados para hacer ese tipo de cómics. Entonces había una buena escena, y que si no se ha hecho más grande es porque Marvel y DC tienen el mayor apoyo que puede haber, que son las películas multimillonarias de Hollywood. Pero que la gente ya se empieza a cansar de la misma historia una y otra vez, y que entonces empieza a ver, aún no, que durará todavía esta historia de las pelis de Marvel y DC, pero que empieza a haber ya un cansancio y empieza a flojear, y que él espera que poco a poco se llegue a un equilibrio entre los dos mundos y que no haya tantos prejuicios con otro tipo de historias.
Hay un tema de actualidad que preocupa a muchos autores y autoras, que es la irrupción de la inteligencia artificial, de las inteligencias artificiales. A ver qué opina él como creador.
What do you think about artificial intelligence as a creator?
There's a new issue of Love and Rockets in America, but there's one before where I have a guy going like this, and he has a T-shirt that says "Fuck AI." That's what I think.
Bueno, no sé si lo habéis entendido, que tiene una portada anterior al último ejemplar de Love and Rockets, que sale en la portada un tipo haciendo así, que pone "Fuck la inteligencia artificial", con lo cual queda claro su opinión sobre el asunto.
Quiero hacer una pregunta seria. Pues, como compañero en Fantagraphics, ¿cómo ha vivido la muerte de Ed Piskor?
Vale. As a partner of yours in Fantagraphics, how have you gone through the death of Ed Piskor?
It was a shock to us all. We knew that Ed Piskor was an energetic person, and liked to fight online and all that stuff. And then he was exposed for some serious mistakes, and yeah, I understand that. But he just loved to fight the people online and this and that, and nobody knew that he had that problem. That problem with depression. So when he passed, when he was gone, it was such a sad shock, because you don't know what to make of it. He was so he just loved comic books, and he loved the history, and he loved to be, to talk about comics and make comics, and he's all that. And then all of a sudden he's gone, and it's a great loss to comics and to people who knew him. Yeah.
Dice que fue un gran shock, que sabían que era una persona enérgica, que era peleón en las redes, le gustaba contestar a la gente, y igual polémico, pero que no sabían de su problema de depresiones, y que entonces pues fue un shock, que era una persona que amaba los cómics, amaba las historias, amaba hablar de cómics y hacer cómics, y de repente ya no está, y que ha sido una gran pérdida para todo el mundo del cómic.
¿Cómo está viviendo estos días la gira que empezó en Barcelona, el contacto con los lectores aquí en España?
How are you living the tour you're doing around Spain?
Oh, it's great.
Contact with people in Barcelona.
That's the best part. We're sightseeing, doing a lot of sightseeing. I've never seen so many churches in my life. But no, it's wonderful. It's great. But my favorite is doing this. I love to talk to the readers and people who enjoy the comics, because it just feels good that I've done something good. Good. I've made comics that people really enjoy, and they keep reprinting them, and that just I couldn't be happier about that.
Bueno, que es lo que más le gusta, que está haciendo mucho turismo, nunca había visto tantas iglesias, pero que esta parte es la que más le gusta, el estar en contacto con la gente, que le da la sensación de haber hecho algo bien.
Tenemos 5 o 10 minutillos más. Yo creo que es un buen momento para quien quiera hacer alguna pregunta. Preguntas cortitas, por favor, importante, nada de reflexionar de repente, sino una pregunta cortita, porque tenemos muy poco tiempo, ¿vale? Vamos primero aquí, luego, ¿vale?
Yo, pues bueno, si se ha planteado hacer historias de terror, sí.
Have you thought about making terror stories? Just like terror.
This is horror.
Terror, yeah.
Oh, I've done a few. There's a comic book called Blubber that I do, and it's very violent and ugly.
Que ha hecho alguna cosa, que tiene un cómic que se llama Blubber y que sí, que ha hecho alguna cosa, sí.
Había por ahí atrás.
Sí, yo quisiera saber qué lee ahora, si hay algún autor al que siga de manera particular o...
What are you reading right now? Is there any author that you like?
Not at the moment because I've been working so much that all I do is read my own work to edit it. So yeah, I'm just writing so much, and so I'm not really versed in comics right now.
Dice que ahora mismo no, porque está centrado en su trabajo, que lo único que hace es releer lo suyo para editarlo y trabajando, que ahora mismo no te puedo decir ninguna cosa en la que esté metido.
Espera. Primero Iñaki y luego Borja, ¿vale?
Sí. ¿Tiene pensado jubilarse? ¿Algún día dejará de dibujar?
Are you ever going to stop working? Are you going to stop drawing?
Only when I'm drawing and it's like, ay! That's it.
Queda claro, ¿no? No.
You never know when, you know.
Nunca sabes cuándo, pero...
Borja.
¿Cuántos ejemplares imprimisteis del fanzine Love and Rockets antes de Fantagraphics?
Before Fantagraphics, do you know how many issues did you print of Love and Rockets?
Our fanzine, our own one?
Fanzines, yeah.
800.
800.
Yeah, and the printer messed up, you know, so we only had like 600 copies, and the rest were just covers.
El impresor se equivocó y tenían solo 600 copias y luego como 200 portadas solamente.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
No? Okay.
¿Quieren que les firmes?
They want you to sign.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Pues si os parece, pasamos a las firmas. Muchísimas gracias, Beto.
Thank you. Thank you so much.